The bright lights of the Galactic Council ship Harmony's Edge flashed red as alarm sounds filled the air. Representatives from different planets hurried into the main meeting room, their faces showing worry and fear. The ship's crystal walls seemed to shake with the urgency of the moment. High Counselor Valthara stood at the center of the room. Her blue skin was almost see-through, and her large eyes reflected the seriousness of the situation. She raised her hand, and the room became quiet. "My friends," she said in her musical voice, "we face a terrible crisis. The Crimson Void terrorists have attacked again. They have taken control of 3 space stations in the neutral zone. More than 50,000 innocent people are now their prisoners." A large hologram appeared in the middle of the room, showing 3 space stations floating in the darkness of space. Each station was huge, home to thousands of beings from many different worlds. Now they were all trapped, waiting to see if they would live or die. Commander Thecalon stepped forward. He looked like a tall lizard, walking on 2 legs, with green scales and yellow eyes that never seemed to blink. "The terrorist leader calls himself Crickstar," he said in his hissing voice. "His demands are simple, but impossible. He wants us to remove all our forces from the Kepler sector. He also wants 100 million galactic credits. If we don't give him what he wants in 72 hours, he will kill all the hostages." The room filled with worried whispers. The Verdani delegates, who looked like walking trees with faces, swayed gently as they spoke to each other in their singing language. The Draconian representatives, proud warriors with wings and sharp teeth, growled their anger at the terrorist demands. Ambassador Liraine of the Verdani spoke up, her voice like wind through leaves. "We must think carefully about this. Maybe we can negotiate. Perhaps we could agree to a partial withdrawal from the sector. We could save some lives while finding a peaceful solution." High Counselor Valthara nodded. "Yes, negotiation has always been our way. We are civilized beings. In the past, we have solved similar problems by talking to the extremists. Even the worst terrorists have kept their promises when we made deals with them." For 3 long hours, the debate went on. One species after another suggested different ways to negotiate with the terrorists. Some wanted to pay part of the money. Others suggested trading prisoners or giving up small pieces of territory. It was the same approach that had worked for hundreds of years. Talk, compromise, and find a middle ground that everyone could accept. But in one corner of the room, 2 figures sat completely still and silent. Ambassador Duhayan of Earth stared at the hologram of the captured stations. His dark eyes never moved from the image of the trapped civilians. Next to him, Admiral Minho looked at his datapad, studying numbers and ship positions like a hunter, watching his prey. The human delegation had said nothing during the entire meeting, while other species talked about tribute payments and territorial concessions. The humans just watched and listened. Finally, High Counselor Valthara noticed their silence. She turned to face the human representatives. "Ambassador Duhayan," she said surely, "your people support finding a peaceful solution through negotiation. I know that 847 humans are among the hostages on those stations." Duhayan stood up slowly. Even though humans were smaller than most other galactic species, there was something about him that made the room feel different. When he moved, it was like a dangerous animal getting ready to strike. The other delegates could sense the change in the air. "Honored Counselors," Duhayan began, his voice calm but carrying a cold edge that made everyone uncomfortable. "I want to thank you for your dedication to peaceful solutions. Your methods have kept the galaxy stable for a very long time." He paused and looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each delegate. "But I need to make something very clear about how humans handle situations like this. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We eliminate them." The silence that followed was complete. No one moved. No one breathed. The words hung in the air like a threat that everyone could feel, but no one quite understood. Admiral Minho stood up beside his ambassador. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but somehow more frightening than if he had shouted. "The Third Fleet is already moving into position." The other delegates looked at each other with confusion and growing alarm. In their experience, military threats were just part of the negotiation process. Everyone made aggressive statements before settling down to serious bargaining. But something about the humans felt different. There was no emotion in their voices, no anger or frustration. They spoke like they were discussing the weather or reading a shopping list. High Counselor Velthara tried to restore order. "Ambassador Duhayan, surely you don't mean to suggest military action without attempting diplomatic contact first. The risks to the hostages would be enormous." Duhayan looked at her with eyes that seemed to see right through her. "Counselor, with respect, the risk to the hostages ended the moment humans became involved. The only risk now is to the terrorists." As the human delegation prepared to leave the meeting, the rest of the galaxy was about to learn a lesson they would never forget. While the Galactic Council members continued arguing in their meeting room, something very different was happening in space. Admiral Minho had already given orders to his fleet before the council meeting even ended. He called it Protocol 7, a simple rule that meant no talking, no waiting, and no giving up. The human Third Fleet appeared out of hyperspace like ghosts, becoming real. One moment the space around the neutral zone was empty, and the next moment it was filled with human warships. These ships looked nothing like the beautiful, curved vessels that other alien races used for exploring space. Human ships were built for one thing only: fighting. The destroyers looked like giant metal wedges covered in weapons. The frigates were long and thin, built to move fast and hit hard. At the center of the fleet was the biggest ship of all, a massive battleship called Sol's Fury. It was so large that it could be seen from the captured space stations, hanging in space like a metal mountain. Captain Jinwoo stood on the bridge of his destroyer, Busan Thunder. He was a thin man, with sharp eyes and hands that never shook, even in the most dangerous situations. When Admiral Minho's voice came through the communication system, Jinwoo listened carefully. "All ships, this is Admiral Minho speaking," the voice said calmly. "Your orders are very simple. Kill all the terrorists. Save all the civilians. No exceptions. No terrorist gets to live through this." Jinwoo smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who was very good at his job, and his job was war. "Understood, Admiral," he replied. "All weapons ready." Far away on the captured space station called New Meridian, the terrorist leader Crickstar was watching the human ships arrive. He was a tall, purple-skinned alien with 4 arms and red eyes. He had been a terrorist for many years, and had taken hostages many times before. He thought he knew how this would end. "Look at those stupid humans," he said to his followers, laughing. "They think their ugly ships will scare us. They're just like all the others. They'll make angry noises for a while, then they'll sit down and negotiate with us like civilized beings." Crickstar had done this dance many times. First, the military ships would arrive and try to look threatening. Then someone would demand to talk to him. He would make more threats about killing hostages. Eventually, the government representatives would agree to give him some of what he wanted in exchange for releasing some of the prisoners. It always worked the same way. But as Crickstar watched the human ships, something felt wrong. The ships weren't doing what they were supposed to do. They weren't sending him messages demanding surrender. They weren't broadcasting threats or trying to negotiate. They just moved into position around all 3 captured stations like pieces on a game board. "Why aren't they talking to us?" asked one of his lieutenants. A nervous-looking alien with green skin and too many eyes. Crickstar tried to look confident, but inside he was starting to worry. "They're just trying to look tough," he said. "Soon they'll call us and beg us to make a deal." But the call never came. Instead, something much more frightening happened. The human ships began scanning the stations with technology that Crickstar had never seen before. His instruments showed energy patterns that made no sense. It was like the humans were looking right through the station walls, and seeing everything inside. On the bridge of Soul's Fury, Lieutenant Sujin worked at her computer station. She was young, maybe 25 years old, but she was one of the best intelligence officers in the human fleet. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as information flowed across her screens. "Admiral," she said without looking up from her work, "the quantum scanning is complete. We have exact locations for all 53,214 hostages on all 3 stations." Admiral Minho nodded. He was an older man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of fighting. "What about the terrorists?" "For 137 confirmed targets," Sujin replied. "Our computer analysis shows they're all willing to die for their cause. None of them will surrender if we ask nicely." The Admiral's face showed no emotion. "Then we don't ask." On New Meridian, Crickstar was becoming more and more nervous. His scanners showed that the human ships had somehow mapped the entire interior of his station. That should have been impossible. The station's shields were designed to block all scanning attempts. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his technical officer. The alien shook his head, his tentacles writhing with confusion. "I don't know, sir. It's like they can see through solid metal. Their technology is far beyond anything we've encountered." Suddenly, all the lights on the station flickered. Then the backup power systems failed. The communication networks went down one by one. Within minutes, Crickstar found himself cut off from his other stations and unable to contact the outside galaxy. "What's happening?" he screamed. His answer came in the form of shadows moving through the station's corridors. Human soldiers appearing where no soldiers should be able to go, using technology that seemed like magic to the terrified terrorists. The real fight was about to begin. The attack started at exactly 1:47 in the afternoon, Galactic time. On all 3 space stations at once, human soldiers began their mission. What happened in the next 23 minutes would change how everyone in the galaxy thought about war. Admiral Minho stood on the bridge of his giant ship Soul's Fury, watching a big screen that showed the battle. The screen had red dots for the terrorists and blue dots for the innocent people being held prisoner. As he watched, the red dots started disappearing one by one, but all the blue dots stayed safe. "Station 1, tell me what's happening," the Admiral said into his microphone. Captain Yunji's voice came back through the speaker. She was leading the attack on a station called Haven's Rest. "Sir, we have secured all the areas where civilians are being held. We have eliminated the terrorists in sections Alpha through Delta. We're moving to the final areas now." "What about Station 2? Admiral Minho asked. "This is Commander Taeyong reporting from Crossroads Station," another voice replied. "We are completing our sweep of the entire facility. No innocent people have been hurt. The terrorist resistance is falling apart." The human soldiers moved through the space stations like they were following a perfect plan. They knew exactly where to go and exactly what to do. They eliminated every terrorist they found while keeping every innocent person completely safe. No other army in the galaxy could do anything like this. On the first station, New Meridian, the terrorist leader Crickstar had locked himself in the main control room. With him were his last few followers and 50 frightened civilians that he was using as human shields. The purple-skinned alien held a powerful bomb in his 4 hands. His red eyes were wide with fear and confusion. "This can't be happening," he screamed into his radio. "How are they doing this? How did they get this kind of technology? Where did these weapons come from?" Suddenly, the doors to the control room exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris, human soldiers in advanced armor stepped into the room. Their leader was Sergeant Young Ho, a calm man with steady hands and cold eyes. "We got our technology the same way we get everything else," Young Ho said quietly. "From necessity. When your entire species spends 50,000 years fighting just to stay alive, you learn to fight better than anyone else in the universe." Crickstar looked through the windows of his control room and could see the other two stations floating in space nearby. He expected to see explosions and fires, signs of the massive battle that should have been happening. Instead, he saw nothing. No explosions, no damage, no signs of fighting at all. Just the human ships sitting quietly in space, waiting patiently, like metal vultures. "You're all monsters," Crickstar whispered, his voice shaking with terror. Young Ho slowly shook his head. "No, we're not monsters. We're what monsters are afraid of." The human operation was like watching a surgeon work. Every move was precise and perfect. The soldiers found and disarmed all the bombs that the terrorists had hidden throughout the stations. They eliminated every single terrorist without harming a single innocent person. Then they carefully helped all the prisoners get to safety, treating them with surprising gentleness after showing such deadly efficiency to their captors. In the final moment, Crickstar made one last desperate attempt to cause damage. He raised his bomb high in the air, ready to trigger it and kill everyone in the control room. But before he could press the button, 3 human snipers fired their weapons at exactly the same time from 3 different positions. The bomb fell from Crickstar's hands and clattered harmlessly across the floor as the terrorist leader collapsed. Captain Soyoung's voice came through the station's communication system, speaking to all the people who had been held prisoner. "Attention everyone. This is Captain Soyoung of the Terran Federation 3rd Fleet. You are now safe. Please walk calmly to the marked meeting points where our medical teams will check to make sure you're healthy. Then we'll help you get home to your families." The only sound that followed was the crying of grateful people who thought they were going to die but were now free. Admiral Minho spoke to all his ships with quiet pride in his voice. "All stations report complete success. We have rescued 53,214 civilians. We have eliminated 437 terrorists. We have suffered 0 casualties among our own forces." He paused for a moment, then said something that would be remembered throughout the galaxy for generations to come. "Remember this day, everyone. This is why humans don't negotiate with terrorists. It's because we don't need to negotiate. We can simply end the threat completely." As news of the perfect rescue operation spread across the galaxy, every criminal organization and terrorist group received the same message. Humans were different from every other species. They didn't bargain with evil. They simply destroyed it. After the human rescue operation ended, shock waves spread through the entire galaxy like ripples in a pond. In the council meeting room on the ship Harmony's Edge, alien representatives sat in complete silence as reports kept coming in about what the humans had accomplished. Commander Kalon, the lizard-like alien with green scales, stared at his data pad with wide yellow eyes. His voice came out as barely a whisper. "This is impossible. 0 innocent people died. Every single terrorist was eliminated. How did they do this?" High Counselor Velthara had read the same report 7 times, but she still couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her blue see-through skin seemed to glow with confusion and worry. "In all of our recorded history," she said slowly, "similar rescue operations have resulted in an average of 23% civilian deaths, even when negotiations were successful. But the humans achieved something we've never seen before: absolute perfection." Ambassador Liarain, of the tree-like Verdani people, spoke with a voice that shook like leaves in a storm. They didn't even try to talk to the terrorists first. No warnings, no demands, no attempts at communication. They just showed up and eliminated the entire threat. The big hologram in the center of the room showed the 3 space stations that had been captured by terrorists just hours before. Now, they were completely safe and getting back to normal operations. People who had been prisoners were being checked by doctors, while human soldiers stood guard quietly and professionally. "We need to talk about what this means," Velthara announced to everyone in the room. The human way of handling this crisis was certainly effective, but it represents a complete change from how civilized galactic society normally handles problems. Something very strange then happened. Counselor Drakethel of the Draconians stepped forward to speak. The Draconians were famous throughout the galaxy as fierce warriors with sharp teeth, powerful wings, and a culture built around honor in battle. If anyone should have approved of the human military approach, it should have been them. But Drakethel surprised everyone. "Even we Draconians understand the importance of negotiation," he said, his deep voice rumbling with concern. "We may be warriors, but we believe in giving enemies a chance to surrender with honor. These humans, they fight wars like emotionless machines. There was no honor, no ritual, no chance for the enemy to prove their courage. Just cold, calculated elimination." The debate that started that day would continue for months throughout the galaxy. Some alien species called for humanity to be immediately kicked out of the Galactic Council. They argued that human methods were too extreme and violent for a peaceful galactic community. "They're dangerous," insisted one representative from the Pacifist Harmony Collective. "If they can eliminate an entire terrorist organization in 23 minutes without even trying to negotiate, what's to stop them from deciding that we are threats to?" But other species pointed to the results that no one could argue with. 3 major terrorist cells had been completely destroyed, thousands of innocent lives had been saved, and a message had been sent to every criminal organization in the galaxy that would echo for generations. The Ethereal Collective, an ancient race of beings made of pure energy, sent a formal message to the Council that surprised many. "We have watched the younger races for millions of years," their message said. "We have seen them struggle with the balance between peace and necessity. The humans are the first species we have observed that truly understands an important truth. Sometimes the greatest mercy is the complete elimination of those who would show no mercy to others." Meanwhile, secret reports were coming in from intelligence agencies throughout the galaxy. The effects of the human operation were spreading faster than anyone had expected. 17 different terrorist organizations had voluntarily surrendered to local police forces rather than risk having humans sent after them. Criminal gangs that had operated freely for decades were disbanding. Pirates who had terrorized space lanes for years were abandoning their ships and seeking legitimate jobs. Ambassador Duhayan received an encrypted message from Earth's military command while the council debates continued. The message was short but significant. "Terrorist activity has dropped 94% in all sectors where human presence is known. Criminal organizations are self-policing rather than risk human intervention. Continue current protocols." The psychological impact was more powerful than any weapon the humans had used. The mere possibility that humans might become involved in a situation had become the galaxy's most effective deterrent against crime and terrorism. Captain Hiron of Human Intelligence presented her analysis to the Council. "The criminals aren't just afraid of our technology or our soldiers," she explained. "They're terrified of our absolute resolve. Other species negotiate, compromise, and accept partial solutions. We don't. When we decide that something needs to be stopped, we stop it completely." But perhaps the most telling response came from an unexpected source: the children. Throughout the galaxy, young beings from dozens of different species began sleeping better at night. Parents reported that their children were no longer having nightmares about space pirates or terrorist attacks. One young Altarian child sent a drawing to the human embassy. It showed stick figures of various aliens standing safely behind a protective wall made of human soldiers with serious faces and big weapons. The message written below it in crayon said simply, "Thank you for keeping the scary monsters away." The galaxy was learning a new lesson about the balance between peace and security. 6 months had passed since the humans rescued all those people from the terrorist space stations. During that time, the entire galaxy had changed in ways that nobody could have predicted. The numbers told the whole story. Terrorist attacks had dropped to the lowest levels in recorded galactic history. Space piracy had almost completely disappeared in areas where human ships patrolled. Criminal organizations that had caused trouble for decades were either shutting down completely or actually helping the police catch other criminals. In the council meeting room on Harmony's Edge, something historic was about to happen. High Counselor Valthera stood at the center of the room, holding a document that would change galactic law forever. Her blue, translucent face showed mixed emotions. She looked both worried and relieved at the same time. "Fellow council members," she began, "today we officially approve what has become known as the Terran Clause." She cleared her throat and read from the document. "When diplomatic solutions have been tried and failed, and when innocent lives are in immediate danger, the Galactic Council may vote to request military help from the Terran Federation. We understand that such help will focus on saving civilians by completely eliminating all hostile forces." The room was quiet for a moment. Then, one by one, every single species in the council voted yes. Even the most peaceful aliens, who normally refused to support any kind of violence, agreed that having humans as a final option was necessary for galactic safety. Ambassador Duhayan stood up to address the council one last time about this matter. His voice was calm but serious. "We never wanted to become the galaxy's enforcers," he said. "We would much rather live in a galaxy where our methods weren't needed at all. But since they are needed, we will carry that burden so that others don't have to." Meanwhile, Admiral Minho had been promoted to Fleet Admiral and was now in charge of something called the Galactic Response Force. He worked from a new headquarters built on Luna Station, one of Earth's moons. His top officers were Captain Soman, Commander Genesio, and Colonel Sung-hee. These three represented a new type of human military leader, soldiers, who were trained specifically to handle problems anywhere in the galaxy. The most important thing to understand, Fleet Admiral Minho explained to his staff during a meeting, is that we never actually have to fire our weapons if we don't want to. Our reputation has become our most powerful weapon. This turned out to be completely true. In the weeks that followed, several criminal organizations tried to cause trouble, but stopped as soon as they learned that humans might get involved. The Obsidian Cartel was a group of space criminals who made money by taking over mining operations and stealing valuable minerals. They had planned to attack a mining facility in the Vega star system. They spent weeks preparing their assault, gathering ships and weapons. But then they discovered that some of the miners working at the facility were human. Within hours of learning this information, the entire criminal organization abandoned their plan and fled to a different part of the galaxy. A different group of terrorists had spent months planning to attack a convoy of diplomatic ships carrying important ambassadors to a peace conference. They had studied the route, positioned their ships, and were ready to strike. But then their intelligence network reported that Ambassador Duhayan would be traveling with the convoy. The terrorist leaders immediately called off the attack and ordered their ships to retreat. These incidents became common throughout the galaxy. Criminal organizations would plan elaborate schemes to rob, kidnap, or terrorize innocent people. Then they would discover that humans were somehow connected to their target. Every time, without exception. The criminals would abandon their plans rather than risk facing human military forces. Captain Soman was studying these reports when she made an interesting discovery. "Sir," she said to Fleet Admiral Minho, "according to our intelligence, there are now 47 different criminal organizations that have completely disbanded rather than risk human intervention. They didn't just stop their current operations. They actually quit being criminals entirely." Commander Genesio added his own observation. "We're also seeing something we've never seen before in galactic history. Some criminal groups are actually turning themselves in to local police and providing information about other criminals. They're hoping that cooperation will keep them safe from us." But perhaps the most significant change was happening at the individual level throughout the galaxy. Parents from dozens of different alien species reported that their children were sleeping better at night. Teachers said that young beings in schools were no longer having anxiety attacks about space pirates or terrorist attacks. A particularly touching example came from the planet Harmony 7, which was home to a school for children from many different worlds. The young beings there created a large artwork showing stick figures of different alien species standing safely behind a protective barrier made of human soldiers. At the bottom, written in many different languages, was a simple message: "Thank you for keeping the monsters away." Colonel Sung-hee brought this artwork to Fleet Admiral Minho's office. "Sir," she said, "I think this shows what we've really accomplished. We haven't just eliminated terrorists and criminals. We've given an entire galaxy the chance to sleep peacefully at night." The humans had become something that the galaxy had never had before, guardians who were willing to do whatever was necessary to protect the innocent.